gonna go. Okay. First off, I kind of want to talk about the start your engines. I know it's not part of the spoilers, but it's an important mechanic for Commander in that it's not the best. It acts just like the token from the Ring Bearer, where you go down the tiers, and then once you hit the fourth tier, which is beyond the third, it's like a countdown for every time your opponents lose life during your turn. Uh, it acts like a gatekeep before the race should start. So this literally acts in a way of preventing you from getting access to parts of your card until you hit the fourth tier of start your engines. I don't think it's really good in Commander, but um, there are some exceptions. There are some Commander cards I'm going to talk about today that are great because they're on cheap Commanders, so you could get access to start your engines nice and early, and you get through the tiers as fast as you can. I wouldn't play this mechanic unless you have a commander from the command zone, or you are going to be playing a very long game like with stacks and drag it out very long, and then you could probably get access to this. Now, if you were to play cards with start your engines in your deck, and it's not from your command zone, you're not playing stacks, you will most likely inconsistently reach the fourth tier. By the time you reach it, uh, the game will be over. So highly recommend you don't play any cards with this unless it's from your command zone. And again, if you're playing a long game like stacks. With that out of the way, we're just going to move on to my favorite cards. Repurposing Bay. This acts like a birthing pod for just artifacts. It's really good. You just tutor out something that's 1+ the sacrifice artifact, and you just put it directly into play. There's a lot of artifacts that untap another target artifact. There's also all kinds of certain different ways where you can untap this and reuse it again the same turn. You just need a lot of excess mana because it costs you mana to activate it, but there are ways to get around that too. I think artifacts are some of the best in the business at producing mana, and albeit it's mostly untapped, so you can use it the turn you get it. Way better than I think people give it credit for. I'm excited to see how it performs in the near future. I want to see if it's getting alternate art. So, yeah, been 2 arts. I mean, okay. There, give it a minute. Yeah, different art. Um, well, I guess it's kind of the same. They just yellowed out the borders. So I'm not a big fan. I wouldn't pay a premium price for this when it's literally the same box but different colors. Chromax, this can be a big reprint. If you missed out on the first reprint back in the day, um, that was full art. This will be your chance to pick up a new copy. I think it looks better than the previous one. It'll probably be a little bit cheaper than the previous iteration. If you don't know what it does, it's fast mana. Lets you have access to your cards much earlier at the trade-off of losing a card from your hand. This pairs up really well with some of the Aether or the Start Your Engine commanders I'm going to be talking about today, because most of the cheap ones, the good ones, are 2 mana. Um, I shan't on Scarab's Fist. I kind of want to talk about this guy in that you could play a discard outlet, kind of a reanimator list, where you discard a really big creature, you pay 3 mana to dodge its converted mana cost. it becomes an exact copy of it, except it's a 4/4 zombie. And it's in Esper colors because you got Orzhov up here in the corner, and then you have a blue symbol on its text box. So it's in the perfect colors for that kind of strategy. I don't know if it'll overtake some of those reanimator strategies. The two best commanders right now are the ones from D&D, and then the other one is, I feel like it's a planeswalker kind of list, but that's more of a miracles kind of style gameplay. Amanatu. Thunderous Velocipede has trample. Each other vehicle and creature enters with the +1/+1 counter. If the mana value of that card is 5 or greater, it enters with 3 counters. So it's got some nice, what do you call, flex and I guess scaling in the game. In the early game, it pumps up your creatures so you could get to this crew 3 easier, but I don't think you really care about that. I think you care more about just that you're throwing counters and stuff for just creatures coming into play. It also doesn't care about tokens. Um, so a lot of things that have this kind of effect do care about the type of card. It also throws it on vehicles too. We have this art, which is kind of like a graffiti style in the background here. Lots of color. And then they have a color shifted one. I don't know why they're doing that where they go from this to this. I feel like the rainbow one looks way cooler, but maybe it's too busy and you can't really make the difference. So what's going on? And then this is the original art, just yellow shifted again. Kind of cool. Achik, Emerald Radian. This guy kind of acts like the original Izoni, only this one also cares about artifacts in your graveyard. So you cast a much wider net. You probably make a lot more 1/1s versus Izoni. Whenever an insect you control dies, which is the tokens you make with this commander, you throw a counter on him and each opponent loses a life. So it's a brutal commander. It's a little spendy for 6 mana, but I think it's worth it for that ETB trigger for sure. For Collar Chariot, it's probably one of the few vehicles, 2 of them I think, that's really good. Crypt Collar lets you make a 2/2 zombie every time you discard 1 or more cards. It doesn't care what kind of card, which is a very wide net. Unlike the zombie we talked about earlier, where it specifically cares about creatures, this does not. And you could probably rack up a lot of zombies in the right shell for this card. Zur Glorious Pass. This is our first start your engines kind of card that I think is really great as a commander. Once you hit the 4th tier, you reach max speed. You can, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you make a 2/2 black zombie creature token, and it's a free sack outlet from the command zone. The only caveat is you can only activate it once a turn, but any commander you have 3 opponents, so you get to activate it 4 times. You just need to find a way to get a recyclable creature from the graveyard back to play. I think the best example could be like a reassembling skeleton, and this is the best kind of setup for like aristocrats. You make an additional body for fodder, which doubles your death trigger. So if you mix in a Zulaport Cutthroat every revolution on the table, you train people for 8 life and gain 8 life. Pretty darn sick. And it's 2 mana, so you could start the engines as late as turn 2. If you get things like Chromax or any other fast mana pieces, you could even do it on turn 1. Bulwark Ox. This guy is going to be great for +1/+1 counter themes, because you could sack it and give all your stuff hexproof and indestructible if it has a counter on it. I think it's going to get a different art. Yeah, this looks a lot cooler than this. I don't know what's the point with the yellow shifting, but it's there, I guess. Or the pink one. I don't know. Take what you want. I wish they did a little bit more. It kind of reminds me of Commander Masters, where they just put a solid color behind a portrait, and instead they did something a little bit cooler with the art, but kept the solid color background. It feels a little lazy from like an art perspective, but I like the design of the card. Redshift Rocketeer Chief. We got a couple of these Gruul commanders that care about activated abilities. We have uh, Roshin, and then we have Agatha, and now we have this guy. You can take your pick of which one you would prefer. Um, it also is the first thing that I'm going to be talking about. It has the ability Exhaust. I'm not a fan of the Exhaust ability because you can only use it once. But the nice thing about this and being your commander is if it dies and you replay it, it resets the exhaustion and you could use it again. And the exhaust ability is pretty good. You put any number of permanent cards from your hand into the battlefield. So like once you get his power big enough where you could activate him and make 12 mana, it's like why not activate this ability and do something? But I imagine you'll be using this tap ability to use a bunch of activated abilities in your 99 card shell. And that's where it kind of feels similar to Agatha and Roshin. It just goes about it in a slightly different way. He's cool. And we get this version of him. Kind of looks like a gremlin. I love that movie. Medicant Cor Guidelight. His power is equal to the number of artifacts you control, so it's something that you could really abuse. You can make him really big, really fast, and probably win with commander damage really consistently. It's another Start Your Engines card. It's 2 mana, so it's easy to pull off. Once you reach max speed of the 4th tier, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1 additional to copy it. So you really accelerate his power really fast, but like I feel like just doubling any artifact for just 1 extra is super busted, especially in like an artifact shell where you have a lot of cost reduction amongst artifacts pretty consistently. I could think of at least 5 coupons that are in these colors for just artifacts, and you could really take advantage of this. And there's a lot of scary artifacts that you can make duplicates of. Of all the Start Your Engines command zone kind of cards, this is probably the best one by far. And this art's pretty dope. Ather Spark, it's okay. It's a bit of a niche kind of setup. You want to attach it to a group slug commander because every time your commander does damage, it has a triggered ability with this top paragraph. Whenever equipped creature deals damage, it has to be combat damage, so it's not as good. You put that many loyalty counters on it, so you want to be playing extra combats. You want to be playing putting this on a commander with double strike or something of that matter. That way you maximize the number of counters that you put on this. But I mean, a lot of damage equals a lot of counters, and a thing that like extra combat decks have, or an issue that they have, is they run out of cards, and this fixes that problem. It's -5 lets you draw. It's +1 attaches. It's -10 gives you a bunch of mana. So take your pick of what you need in a given scenario, but I feel like you'll just be equipping it so you can draw a bunch of cards, at least 2 a turn. And it's, I guess, unique is mostly why I want to talk about it, because it's a Planeswalker equipment. It's the first of its kind, and it's a weird one. Originally, I thought this triggers on any damage, but it specifically says combat, so it's not as good as I was hoping. You getting there's a 500 count of this version going to be very expensive. But then again, like I said earlier, it's not very powerful, so I wonder if that's going to be too expensive. Vinwick's Verbos Host. Another great Start Your Engines card. It's almost like they designed this mechanic to be stapled onto cards that are cheap in cost, knowing that it's going to annoy players, that you have to wait full 4 turns to get the desired effect. It's the gatekeeping that I was mentioning earlier. Like, no one wants to be playing cards that they don't have full access to. Once you reach max speed, instead of drawing 1 card, you draw 2. It's a 0/4 body, so it stuffs out a lot of aggro. And if you didn't know, this is the 1/2 of the giant from Battle Bond. So I imagine he's going to show up in this set too. Cool art. This is kind of a bit of a dishonorable mention, or Gonda Raceway. I feel like people are going to see this and they're going to be like, oh, it's like the new version of Ancient Tomb, only it doesn't hurt yourself, but you have to get past this gate of Start Your Engines. So I wouldn't play this unless, like I said, you're running a commander, run the command zone with Start Your Engines, or 2, you're playing a really long game. So it's a rare. There's going to be a lot more copies floating around than you think. Do not pre-order this because I think it's going to be a bulk rare and it's only going to fit in very niche decks. Maybe it'll be more expensive because of a 60 card format where they could consistently get engines out pretty early. But again, be wary of this card. It's not as good as it looks. They're printing the other half of the Czech Land from the previous set in Duskmourn, where if you have a forest or island, it's kind of like the Tainted Lands, except they're a lot better. You have access to the bonus color if you have either or, versus the Tainted Lands only cared if you had a swamp. So I'm quite happy about these to be coming out. They're going to be on a budget, or budget friendly, I hope. Somewhere between $3 and $4. I think that's where these will typically sit. But, you know, standard and people playing those, they'll want 4 copies of this kind of stuff. So it's hard to say. And we're going to need full art treatments, which is pretty dope. I'm just going to talk about one because they all do the same, just different colors. And then beyond that, we're just the spoilers. There's only 2 I really want to talk about. But technically these aren't day 1 stuff. Bright Class Gearhulk. First Strike and Trample. This is a bit of a CDH card. On ETB, you could search for up to 2 target artifact creatures or enchantments with the converted mana cost 1 or less. I'd say most casual players don't care about a value of 1 or less, but in CDH you do. And it's on a significant body, and there's a lot of scary permanents that are 1 mana or less. So I think this is the best Gearhulk that they've spoiled so far by a significant margin. Can't wait to play this myself. And already Rocketeer Engineer. For 5 mana, his power is equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. When he attacks or enters, you choose an artifact card from your graveyard. You may sack an artifact and swap them, essentially. So you could cheat out your big expensive artifacts to make his power really big. You'll want to be playing like a discard deck or a mill deck to find your really sick and scary artifacts and cheat them into play. And that's all I have for today. I'm going to do another stream tomorrow morning for, I guess, the second day's worth of spoilers, which is the 22nd. I like to wait till the morning after. That way I have a full scope of everything that's come out. And if you like what you heard, like what you saw, I'm going to be covering these spoilers until the 31st when the whole thing finishes up. So everyone take care now. Have a great time. Bye. Oh, yeah. I'll try the eye contact thing. I'll turn it off for next time. But thanks for watching.